done today so that it can be available. And so let's get started. I'm going to just share my screen so we can follow along with the presentation that I've got put together. And let me just see, I'm just going to minimize this. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm not sure where you guys are at in terms of your journey for pregnancy or postpartum, but this program is for really any moms. I've identified it as first-time moms in terms of many of the women I work with kind of become a first-time mom and they find out, oh my goodness, this is not quite what I was expecting. So this program has been specifically designed for them, but I think it's really relevant for any moms and really anywhere on the motherhood journey, because I think we can use refreshers in this stuff to help us figure out how to take care of ourselves and how to not lose ourselves as women and just as people once we become moms, because it just takes up such a big part of our world. So with first babies, of course, big changes are on the way. We're going to take the next hour or so to really focus on you. So if you can just turn off any other devices so you can really focus and give yourself this time, we're going to look at really how to be able to balance being a new mom and yourself as a person. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, my name is Mary Joan, and I am I'm in Tweed, so I'm not too far away from you guys, and my practice office is in Belleville. And these are the kids that made me moms. So we've got my son, he's now almost 27. So he was my project to figure out all the ins and outs of mothering. And I worked out all the kinks on him. But then you know what? You have your second, and she was just a completely different baby. So what I learned on him, some of it helped me with her, and some of it didn't help me with her. I can't remember what I said. My son's name is Eric. Our daughter is Alana, and she is 22. And that's us as a family at our cottage. So motherhood has been, a great journey, but it's also been a very challenging journey. So a little bit more about me professionally. I have an MSW, so I'm a therapist and have been so since 1994. And really, it was quite interesting. I was, wanted to be a therapist to help people. And I had my first baby and it changed everything. I fell in love with everything related to pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So I've really focused a lot of my work around that population. So I became a childbirth educator and a doula, which I did for 10 years and just love the work. And then I really looked at how to combine my therapy work with this population. So I was able to do advanced clinical training in treating pregnancy and postpartum mood disorders. So that's been a real passion of mine. And from there, I've also done a lot of training and working with couples. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate, but having a baby can sometimes have big impacts on your couple relationship. So I have done lots of specialized training in that area. And most recently, I'm now the owner and director of the Relationship in Belleville, which is, or the Relationship Center in Belleville, which is a therapy practice. So I have a team of therapists who work alongside with me, and we're helping individuals and couples and families kind of navigate life and, dealing with the emotional challenges that come along the way. So before I became a mom for the first time, like I had been around kids my whole life. I was, I thought I was smart. I had a good job, and really I'd achieved any goal I'd set my mind to. And I was trained as a therapist. So I thought, I'm knowledgeable about this stuff. I know what I'm doing. And I'd read all the books and I thought I was ready. And I was in for a shock. I wasn't ready. I thought I was ready, but I wasn't ready. It was so much harder than I had anticipated. And it left me feeling very unsteady and very unsure about myself. And there were so many parts to it. It was the sleep deprivation. I don't know if you guys know this, but sleep deprivation is actually used as a form of torture. But we as new moms, it's a reality. And I had no idea how much of an impact it would have on me and how rough I felt with not getting, sleep more than 2 or 3 hours in a chunk. Babies that wouldn't settle, walking around in the middle of the night, just feeling so alone, missing my freedom. I was thinking I was going to be this very selfless mother and just like love motherhood and embrace every second. And I was surprised to find myself missing kind of my old life and my old freedom. And of course I felt guilty and bad about that, which I didn't need to, but it was a hard journey. I hadn't expected to feel that. Breastfeeding challenges. I don't know if any of you folks are breastfeeding, but if you are, you probably have had some bumps along the way. And just generally this overall sense of what the heck am I doing? And when that all came together, it left me feeling extremely overwhelmed, and overwhelmed in ways that I wasn't prepared for, and really left me kind of just unsure and sort of very, I'd always been a very confident person, but this has left me feeling very not confident in this world that I thought I was so ready for. And really, honestly, it was a bit of a shit show. Like I thought I was I was going to have it all together and know what I was doing, and I was really having a hard time. And as I struggled along, and really I did struggle along, and part of the reason I struggled along was that I kind of just put on this brave face, like I know what I'm doing, I got it all together, but really I was having a hard time and I didn't want anybody to know that. So I kind of hid that, and I didn't really do myself any favors. So then by the time my second baby came along, I really felt like I was having a hard time keeping my head above water. And I figured out where I was going wrong. And that was that I needed help. But I don't know what it's been like for you guys, but for me, I had a really hard time with this notion. I really felt like, well, I wanted this baby. It's my baby. It's my responsibility. Everyone else seems to be doing it fine on their own. What the heck is wrong with me that I need so much help? So finally, the light bulb clicked on. I just had to kind of recognize I was overwhelmed and I needed help, whether I liked it or not. And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't like it. I didn't like that I needed help. I didn't like that I couldn't do it by myself. I somehow internalized that as some kind of a weakness, which of course it's not. But when I was in this mind frame, I just felt like I'm supposed to do it. Are you there, Jen?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know if I heard you say something.
Oh, no. There's a lot of, I don't know if anyone else can hear it, but it's like an echo that's happening.
Oh dear. Any suggestions on what I might be able to do to remedy that?
None. I am not technology savvy.
I wonder, is everybody muted? I wonder if everybody mutes, that might help. So let's give it a whirl, but let me know if it continues to be a challenge. I'll keep this pane up just so I can see you guys. Okay, so as I was saying, I recognized I needed help. It was something I was struggling with, but also what I recognized that I was suffering in the absence of getting help. So I just had to sort of embrace what was. All right, I just need to move you guys over here so I can get my arrow. All right, so as I had my second baby and was figuring out that I was overwhelmed, that I needed help, I was then able to really figure out what were the key things that I needed to feel good as a mom and as a person. And I figured out a lot of things that I did wrong with my first, in that, you know, I just didn't ever really take time for myself. I didn't really do anything without dragging the baby along with me, even though there were capable people who could have taken care of him. And so I really began to understand how I needed to do things differently. And as a caveat, for you guys, my heart goes out to anyone right now who is preparing to have a baby or having small children, because we understand this concept of it takes a village to raise a baby. And when they came up with that, they never imagined we'd be living in a pandemic doing this. So I am going to have some comments at the end around that reality. So just bear in mind that some of the strategies I'm going to talk about, you may be thinking, oh, well, how the heck am I supposed to do that when we're going to be going into lockdown soon? And we will talk a little bit more about that reality at the end. So thinking about, you know, what did I learn and what did I really figure out once I had my second baby? And really the key thing was that I had to ask for help, but I had no clue kind of how to do it. I had no clue where to even look. I had my own internal objections around, I don't want to do it. I feel like I'm weak. I feel like I'm supposed to do this by myself. And so I had to get out of my own way to figure out how to reduce sort of some of the suffering I was going through, because I was making it harder for myself by not kind of leaning into this concept of getting some help. So here is what I learned, that in order for me to kind of feel my best, this is what I needed. I needed to be able to take breaks where I was off duty as a mom, whereas like I just got to be me. I needed to let my partner care for the baby. This one was really hard for me. I don't know if any of you guys can relate, but I was maybe a little OCD, like a little bit like I want it done my way. And if you're not going to do it my way, then I'm just going to do it myself. That did not help me. But it was still a struggle to kind of work with that. And then the last thing I recognized was that I needed to learn how to ask for the help that I really needed, because people couldn't read my mind. I just thought, why can't they read my mind? If my husband loved me, he'd be able to read my mind, but he just wasn't doing it. And it was so frustrating. All right, so you might be thinking, is it even possible to get breaks? And the answer is yes, but it does require letting go. And you know, right now, especially in pandemic times, getting breaks, probably one of your key support peoples is your partner, if you have a partner. But what it requires is having to let your partner help without you hovering. I was so guilty of this. It was like I was right over his shoulder whenever he was trying to do something, and I don't. And you know, it wasn't helpful. It wasn't needed. He's a smart, intelligent person who was capable of figuring things out, but it was just very hard for me to let go. But in order for me to get the breaks I desperately needed, I had to let go and just be okay with him doing things a little differently, or doing things his way, because he was going to be safe, he was going to be fine, but it was me just getting past that piece. So when we think about taking breaks, there are a few key things to really keep in mind. They need to be all about you, because if you kind of look at it, well, you know, I need to do this running around, so I'll just do that. And I'm getting outside the house and I don't have the baby with me, so that'll feel good. But that doesn't really constitute a break, because this is like this precious time you have to fill up your cup. And if we're not using it to its full advantage, then you're not getting the full benefit. So in order for breaks to really work, they can't include running errands. They don't include doing chores, and they're not for anyone else. So this is the time when it's like you get to be thinking just about yourself. And in our culture, you know, being selfish gets a bad rap. You know, I think often we think about being selfish as this negative thing, but this is a time when I think you could actually interchange selfish with self-care. So self-care is not a bad thing. Actually, self-care is a good thing. And that's what we're talking about with breaks, is having it be a full self-care experience to help you fill your cup so that you've got more to give and you just feel better overall. So these are some of the ways that breaks might look. Now, in a pandemic, the bath is maybe the one we're going for here. But you know, some of these breaks are just things that you do for you that are enjoyable. They could be with a friend, they could be outside. But really, these are things that are just for you, and they're just about taking care of yourself. One caveat with breaks: if breaks are happening outside the house, that's sort of easy and sort of clean cut. But you can certainly do breaks in the house, and particularly if you're breastfeeding, you may choose to be a little closer to home. But the idea with the breaks when you're in your home is to let your people know that don't come and get me unless the house is burning down. Like if the baby's fussy, figure it out. If the you know, just figure it out. Like, unless, you know, there's something really catastrophic happening, don't come and get me. So if you are in the house, you might want to have some noise canceling headphones so that you don't hear the baby, because that can kind of undermine the benefit of what the break is supposed to give. But the break is just for you. Breaks aren't, these things do not count as breaks. So cleaning, dealing with the laundry, doing the shopping, those are things that need to be done. And if you want to tack them onto a break time, that's okay, but they don't constitute a break, because those aren't the things that typically fill us up and kind of get us back in touch with who we are as a person. And that's what the idea of the break is, to bring us back to who we are as a person and kind of fill that piece of us up. All right, so in order to have breaks actually work, we have to let go of the idea that we have to do everything ourselves. This one was a really hard one for me. And I did live with the fallout that when we do everything by ourselves, it is really a setup for burnout and resentment. I can remember, you know, walking around with the baby in the middle of the night who wouldn't sleep. and being just so pissed off at my husband who was asleep. And I was just like, I knew it was irrational, but I just was so mad. It's just like, it felt so unfair. And I certainly could have gone to him and said, hey, will you take a turn? And he would have. But it was just like this really weird place I got in my head and feeling so alone. And and that was part of what I needed, as I needed not to feel alone. So in order to be able to have the benefit of letting go of that burden, it means needing to be okay that your partner might do things differently than you do, and that's okay. And it's also really important to recognize that babies do well having different people who have a different touch and who have a different way of doing things. Because think about it, if your baby has one person who does everything precisely the same way every single time, I think that may make a baby who's a little less flexible. So a baby having exposure to different caregivers who maybe do things a little differently, I think helps babies be a little bit more adaptable and flexible, which is a good thing with babies. And think about it, with me, I only got better at figuring out what the baby needed by doing it. So our partner needs to figure things out on their own as well. And it's much easier for them to do it without us there kind of over their shoulder, checking things out or giving them critiques about what they're doing or not doing. So it's also recognizing that that's really important. And we don't want to set partners up, because if it feels like they can't do anything right, they may just stop wanting to help. And not because they're bad people, but just because it feels discouraging. If they feel like they're getting this message, I'm somehow doing it wrong all the time, then why do I keep trying? So we don't want that to happen for you or for them, because they're one of your biggest support pieces, especially right now. So when we think about being home with a new baby, you think about, how much time it takes to care for baby, how much time it takes to, if you're breastfeeding, how much time is consumed by breastfeeding. You probably look around your home and start to be like, oh my gosh, what's happened to this place? And even if you start to think about your physical surroundings, what is stressing you out the most? So this is another piece of getting help, is looking at, you can't do it all. When you're sleep deprived, if you're spending hours and hours and hours feeding a baby, just the care of a baby, there's too much work to go around for one person. So if we think about what is stressing us out in our physical environment, that gives us a place to then be able to specifically make some requests for help. So if you're in your house right now and you look around and I said, I have a magic wish for you. I have 3 hours of domestic help coming to your house right this second. Can you quickly tell me exactly what you would want them to do with their time in order of priority? Like, do you know what you need help with? So many of us are like, yeah, I could figure that out pretty quick. And others would be like, oh my gosh, the place is a disaster. I wouldn't even know where to tell people to start. Or I'm so overwhelmed, I can't even see straight or even think about what would be the most important. So that's part of this exercise, is recognizing what are the things I need to help with the most. And let's get really clear about that and get those things on a list to be able to check them off. And then we have to ask ourselves, how easy is it to say to somebody, hey, could you do my laundry? Hey, would you mind washing the 3 loads of dishes that are piled up in the sink? Hey, would you mind sweeping my floor? Like, it's one thing to know what we need help with. The next piece is, could we actually ask somebody to do those things for us? It kind of makes us a little bit vulnerable to be like, I can't do it all myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're one person, we're human, and we can't do it all by ourselves. So getting okay with asking for help and letting others help us is really important to helping get through motherhood a little more easily, with a little more sanity intact, and kind of liking ourselves and liking the job a little bit better if we're not doing it all ourselves. So in order to really make the most of getting help, it's to be really specific. Like, what do I actually need help with? What are the things that are driving me crazy? And I just think it's easiest just to write them down. And it's like a little list that's on the fridge of, vacuum the living room, clean the bathroom, fold the laundry, empty the dishwasher, whatever those things are, so that if there is somebody who's in a position to help, it's like you don't have to constantly be then trying on the spot to figure it out. You've got a list that you can just kind of refer them to, which makes things easier for you and easier for them. And then we need to think about who are our helpers. And if we have a list of things that are driving us crazy and we have a few people who are our support people who would be happy to let us, or who would be happy to help us, then it's just a matter of matching them up. And we need to think about this. Like, I don't know if you can remember a time when you've been in a position to help someone. Maybe somebody's had a surgery and they needed some help, or maybe it was somebody who had a baby and you went over to help. Can you remember how it made you feel to be able to extend that offer to help and do something that you knew made a difference for that person? Typically, it gives us this feel good feeling. And when we're in a position of needing help, we're giving somebody the opportunity to get that feel good feeling by being able to help us. And we're talking about a time in your life. You're not going to need this help indefinitely ongoing at this level, but certainly in the early postpartum days and during times of high stress or high change, having help and asking for help, I believe, is a real sign of strength. And it means that we're going to suffer less and we're going to feel better emotionally. We're going to feel better as moms. We're going to feel better as partners. So really looking at getting this help is really instrumental in changing how we feel. So again, thinking about who are the people I have who are available and who might be more than happy to help, and then just making that request. And the more clear we can be about this, and the more specific we can be about this, the better. So we think about who will be helping, when will they be helping, and what will they be helping with. So the more we have a plan and we have that mapped out, the easier it is for us and the easier it is for our support people, because then they don't come over saying, okay, well, what do you need me to do? And what should I do now? It's like, there's kind of like this list on the fridge. They go to the list and they just start checking things off. The other thing with help that is really important is to have it on a calendar. So if you guys aren't in the early postpartum period right now, think back to when you were. Think about those first 6 to 8 to 12 weeks and just what chaos it is and how overwhelming it is. And if you knew that you had someone coming every Sunday, every Tuesday, every Thursday, even if it was only for an hour or two, would that make a difference? Typically, it makes a difference, because I don't know if you can think back or if you're getting ready for this, but certainly once I got the idea of having help and I knew that I needed it, it was on a calendar. Even if I was melting down 2 days before, just knowing somebody was coming in 2 days made a difference to help me cope and get through. So again, in that early period when it's really very hard and very challenging, having a plan and having it consistent so that you don't have to be thinking about it every week and you just know what's going to happen. And most people are quite happy to commit like an hour or two a week. They do it at a time that works for them, it works for you, and it's a way again for them to feel like they're making a real difference for you, and a way for you to feel like your coping is enhanced because you've got sort of some support that's prearranged to help you get through those hard moments. And if you're anything like me, this might leave you feeling uncomfortable. And if it does, you know you're probably in the right ballpark. It's like if it's making you feel uncomfortable, it's probably exactly what you need to be doing. And if it doesn't make you uncomfortable, it means you've got great skill in this area, and that's something to be really proud about. So again, it's normal to feel uncomfortable asking for help, but don't let it stop you, because it makes a huge difference between surviving something and enjoying a period of time in your life. And, you know, this is a pretty special, incredible time, but it's also very challenging and demanding. But if we can help women to be able to enjoy it a bit more and to feel like they can hold a sense of themselves that is part of mothering, but also a little bit separate from mothering, that can make a massive difference. So let's talk a little bit about the realities of giving birth in a pandemic. And it's such a ripoff. It is such a ripoff for families who are bringing new babies into their families, or for families with young children. It's certainly a very challenging time, because all the things that we think about helping women are not as readily available, because we're being directed that, you know, we need to limit our social contacts, we need to limit our bubbles. Those things all fly in the face of all of these great strategies that I'm talking to you about. But in my work with women, what I have to really look at, and I look at it on a very case by case basis with each woman that I'm working with. What are the risks of a virus versus what are the risks to a woman's mental health by not having support? And of course, we're not going to do anything to be reckless or careless around someone's health with the virus. But there was one woman in particular, right at the beginning of the pandemic. She just had her third baby, and her three children were very close together in age. And she was just panic stricken, thinking about how she was going to manage this third baby. And she'd experienced some postpartum depression with both of her other postpartum periods. So she was very worried. And we talked about her her situation, and she did have a mom who lived close by. And even though the guidelines at that time were saying that, you know, it was sort of against the guidelines to be contacting with people in other households, given the risk to her mental health, and given that her mother was being very cautious, was not having really, she was working in the home, she wasn't socializing or interacting with other people. We looked at, I think it makes more sense to have your mom come to be able to give you this support so that we preserve your mental health, because you not becoming infected with the virus, but being very debilitated by postpartum depression or anxiety didn't make sense. So we had to look at it. We did it safely. And once we had the plan for her mom to be able to come, even though her mom hadn't even come yet, she was able to breathe a sigh of relief just knowing that there was a plan to support her. So I think we have to look at, if there is a need, are there people who are lower risk in terms of their contact, that it makes sense to consider opening up your bubble to bring them in, to be able to give yourself and your family that support. So I think it's something we have to do on a very individualized basis. But to me, it's really important that we do measure the risk of mental health versus the risk of the virus. So all of this, you know, all of my experience with my own journey with my own two children, and I've worked with thousands of women, both in teaching childbirth classes as a doula, and then as a therapist treating pregnancy and postpartum mood disorders. I've just had this sort of passion to want to create something for this population who are experiencing something that is so incredible, but also so challenging at the same time. So in the new year, I'm really excited to launch a 9-week live online program that is for moms. And it's really designed for women who are in the early postpartum period, but it is open to any woman who feels like she could use support. She could use some support, some strategies, tips, and resources to navigate motherhood so that she feels more balanced and she feels like she can still hold a piece of herself and also enjoy motherhood the way she had really wanted to. So it's going to be a real step-by-step plan with lots of action items and strategies to put into place right away. Something else I'm really excited about is there's going to be a private community of women who are part of the group, and there'll be a private Facebook group where we're able to interact and give and receive support. And I will be leading the course for the entirety of the 9 weeks. I'm not sure if I'll be doing the course live again, so I'm really excited to be able to do the first one live, and then I'm actually going to record the course, and then it will be available to be purchased on demand. But I'm really excited to be able to interact with the first cohort of women in the program, to really be able to fine tune the material to really meet their needs. So that is coming in the new year. And if you're in a place where you feel like that could benefit you, or you feel like you know somebody who that could benefit, you can feel free to let them know about me. These are some places where you can find me, and I'll leave this page up for a moment if you would like to jot down that info or take a screenshot. Something else I'm doing is I want to offer anyone who's on the call today or who is going to be listening to the recording of the call, I've got 5 free spots available to do a 20-minute, I call this a Sanity survival session with me. And it's an opportunity to talk about just anything related to your mothering journey that would be helpful. It's an opportunity if you want to learn a little bit more about the online program that's going to be starting next year. I'll be happy to give some information related to that to see if it's a good fit for you. you, but really just a place to be a resource, to check in with someone who's got lots of experience of working with the emotional parts of this motherhood journey. So I've put the link for those appointment times in the chat, so you can check it out there. And if you would like to grab one, you can just hit that link and that'll take you into my my calendar, and you can just book up a spot. I am going to stop screen sharing right now, and then if everybody wants to unmute, and then we can look at just having some discussion about some of the material presented, and then any questions or any ways that I might be able to be helpful to you guys. And now I just feel like I've talked like so long. I'm going to have a drink of water.
Thanks for all that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It was great. I feel the exact same way you felt.
Yes. In what way, Melinda?
I'm a control freak, I think. I'm learning that about myself.
Yeah. And how is it working for you?
Well, I know what my strengths are, and I know that some of those have become a weakness, like trying to be in control of, how things are done, and, the cleanliness of the house, and I'm just used to doing it on my own, and I had the time before, and now it's like, oh God.
It's hard, isn't it?
To ask for help. So I know what I need to do. It's just putting those
It's hard.
things.
I think about, unless you've been really good at asking for help previously, I think of asking for help as like a muscle. But it's when we're not very good at it, it's like this very tiny, very like little muscle that has no strength and has no muscle mass. So it's like a muscle, and it's like any other muscle. The only way to build that muscle is to practice. And the more we practice asking for help, that muscle gets a little bit bigger, gets a little bit stronger. It gets to be not so hard to do. But the only way we get better is by actually doing it. And so it means we have to live with that discomfort of like, oh, I just hate this feeling. But once we do it and we do it and we do it, then that feeling starts to go away. But there's no other way to get there other than doing it and living through that yucky feeling. But it's hard. But would you say for yourself, Melinda, that when you try to do it all yourself, does that kind of lead to a little bit more overwhelm or a little bit more suffering for you?
Yeah, and that resentment piece that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's like I would be so mad and so resentful, and he had no idea what he did wrong because I never told him what I needed him to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, the late night, like, he's sleeping.
Yeah.
But like, then the next day, they're like, just like nudge me, wake me up. I'm a deep sleeper. I'll take care of it. And I can't. And he does, and I just have to let go. And
but letting go is hard. So it's okay. It's really important that you're able to acknowledge that and just even own that. But then it's like, then if we want our life to be a little easier and a little more enjoyable, it's like taking that next step. And really, it does become more enjoyable when we're not carrying it all by ourselves, because it's like heavy.
Yeah. And he's happy to.
Yes, exactly.
Makes him feel better and learn, and
But yes, there's a letting go, because when they clean the bathroom, they might not do it exactly the way we do it, but it's probably good enough. And if it's not, then maybe you have to have an uncomfortable conversation about, well, this is sort of really what needs to be done to get it to a reasonable level. But there's a delicate balance between, letting go, because there's no worse thing, for somebody who's trying to help, to be criticized or micromanaged around what they're trying to help us with.
Lists work too. I like the whole list making.
Yes.
I like that too. The honey-do list, but it actually works.
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else relate to just kind of the burden or the heaviness of carrying it? Feeling like you're carrying it kind of alone?
I remember when my son was 9 months old, around that time, and I went out for the very first time with my girlfriends to a movie, and I left the house in tears. And my son was screaming, and my husband seemed to be at his wit's end. And I was like, I'm not going. I'm not going. I can't do this. I can't leave the house with you guys. And he was like, get out of the house. He said ever so lovingly, but he was like, get out of the house. And I left with my girlfriends sobbing because I was like, I can't leave my son. And I hated leaving with the family like that because I knew I could fix it.
Yeah.
But I had a great time because my husband texted me about 30 minutes later and picture of the baby sleeping and everything was good. And I ended up, and he said he actually really enjoyed the time just being with our son. Like he had never had that like prolonged period without me, burden one, standing over his shoulder, analyzing everything he does. And he said it was the first time he actually ever felt like he was truly being a father.
Oh.
And I really took that to heart. And it's, you know, it doesn't mean that fixed everything.
Right.
But leaving, it became a lot easier because I realized I really needed to leave so that my husband could be the father he wanted to be.
Right.
It took a lot. And still this day, I have a hard time leaving when my son's crying or whatever. But
right.
I know that he's in good hands because his dad will be there for him.
Yes. Yeah. And so important that, you know, dads, I think dads sort of defer to us as women. I think they think just because we have breasts and a vagina that we all know exactly what to do at every single moment. And we don't. We might let on like we do, but it's like we're just finding our way and they're just finding our way, but we need to give them the opportunity to find their way. Just like we do. We kind of get thrown in those first few weeks and we sort of figure a lot of stuff out, but they don't have the day in, day out the same way. So they just don't figure the stuff out. So they're not as good at soothing the baby just because they don't have as much practice. But if we can step back to give them that opportunity to practice, they deserve and need to have that feeling of, oh, I can calm my baby. Oh, I can soothe them. Oh, the baby does seem to like me. But if they're not getting enough sort of time with the baby doing direct care, that takes a long time to develop. And we don't want the situation where it's like, oh, well, wait till they're 2 and they're walking and talking, then I'll get in on it. It's like, no, I'll be so pissed off, then I'll probably want a divorce. But it's making space.
Yeah, definitely. Can we touch on? I have a thing with when my baby Scarlett, when she cries, it's just, I wish I could just be hypnotized into feeling like there's no, I get anxious. I get like, oh, like stop crying, you know, and I feel like my anxiety rising. I kind of get like, I get angry. I'm not going to hurt her, but I feel like I'm just like, oh, just enough already. It's, you know, it's midnight. Why do you wake up at midnight every night and cry out? And I'm too tired to, you know, like,
yes.
I mean, she's like, I don't know. What is she now? 15 months or something.
Right.
You know, I've been at this a while.
Yes.
But it's like I wish I was.
Is it more that nighttime crying, Melinda, or is it her crying anytime?
I think it's nighttime, or if I'm trying to do like the whole nap thing and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to let you cry it out. And I go to my bed, I'm just like, I just feel anxious. And until she stops, as soon as she stops, I'm like, okay, great. And it's gone. It's gone.
What does the little voice in your head say when she cries at those times when you get feeling more anxious? What does that little voice in your head say?
That I've failed.
Okay.
That I failed as a mom. Like, why can't you take care of this? You know.
I have failed as a mom because she should be sleeping through the night now. I failed as a mom because she should be just going down for her naps easy.
Right. Like people are like, oh no, you just, you know, do your thing, put her in the crib slightly awake and you walk away.
Right.
And it's like, I thought I had that down pat. And then all of a sudden it's like, what? Now she's not.
Change. Yes, baby. Just when you think you have it figured out, they change. They just make us crazy. Okay. So asking that question, what does that little voice in your head say? No wonder you feel anxious when you feel like her crying in those moments represents your failure as a mother. Who wouldn't feel anxious in that moment?
Yeah.
So the problem is not that she's crying, and the problem is not that you're a failure. The problem is just what you're telling yourself about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we can even just sort of recognize that, it's like, no, I'm not a failure. She's just doing a thing right now. It's not pleasant. I'm not enjoying it, but it's just a pretty typical baby thing that lots of babies do.
Yeah.
And she's finding her way and I'm finding my way. So there's some self-talk around that might help you. You're not going to love it, but hopefully it won't bring up that real tight anxiety that comes as soon as that happens. Because if you're seeing yourself as a failure, you're going to feel pretty crappy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's all the, I know, you know, my partner will be like, Mal, like, this is normal. It's, you know,
Yeah.
babies cry.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I know these things, but
But
I'm
they
just
get you. They just grab you.
like, oh, and as soon as she stops, it fades away.
Yes.
And I find myself again.
Yeah.
But
One of the things, I don't know if this will work for you, Melinda, but this was like a lifesaver for me. I just had this mantra that I would say when I was like, and it was mostly with my daughter in the middle of the night because she would just be harder to get back to sleep and I'd be so
Yeah.
desperate to sleep. And
Yeah.
I would just like be like so mad at her because she was like getting in the way of my sleep. It was like
Yeah.
so irrational, but that's just where I was. And I would just walk around with her saying, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Because I think in those moments, I felt like I have screwed up my life. This is going to be my life forever. I'm going to be walking around with this baby for the rest of my life, which of course was not rational or real, but I was just in this vortex. I couldn't see straight. So just saying that over and over to myself in this sort of calm, soothing voice, even though I probably didn't feel all that calm and soothing, it helped me feel like I just wasn't going to lose my mind.
Right.
And that just helped to kind of bring me back down. And this is a phase. Like your daughter, it's a daughter, right?
Yeah.
She won't stay here forever. Like it might be several more weeks, it could be several more months. We don't know. But we know, but probably by the time she's 3, she won't still be doing this. She'll be doing something else that's probably going to create anxiety for you, but it won't be
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
recognizing that we're going to have lots of points along the journey that give us stress and anxiety and challenge us personally with how we feel about ourselves as a mom or as a person. And then we've got to find the strategies to kind of have some compassion for ourselves around that to help ease the suffering. Because if you're in that highly anxious state, you're not feeling great and you're, that's not where we want you to be.
Yeah.
But it's practice. It's like a work in practice. And sometimes you'll pull it off better than others. But it's like keep coming back to the practice. Because if you're telling yourself you're a failure, there's only one way you're going to feel, which is crappy. So we want to just like catch like, no, I'm doing the best I can. It's just a stage. We'll get through this. She's fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's just hard.
Yeah. My partner says all those things to me.
So you just need to listen. And he's like, why don't you listen to me?
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But it's an ongoing work in progress for all of us. And, even though my kids now are adults, there's still challenges. They're just different than what they were in those nights when I was walking the floor thinking I was, so desperate to sleep. They're just different challenges now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mary, do you find that as mothers, we are well, I'm sure we are our worst critics.
Yeah.
But even as a mother myself, I do find that we compare ourselves to other mothers.
Yes.
In the way of social media and Instagram and TikTok and all that sort of stuff, that like we see what we perceive as perfect mothers,
Yes,
perfect families, and we take that to heart. But also even in something so basic as saying, oh, last night my child slept through the night for 6 hours and it was lovely and then oh wow, my baby's been sleeping through the night for since they were born or whatever.
right.
And like we take that to like, oh, like maybe, and I do find that we, like even amongst my own friends, we do that little like,
yes,
oh, my baby does this, my baby does that. Like,
yeah, there's this comparison thing that goes on, and we're brutal. How we sort of look at ourselves and how we judge ourselves. And you guys have it so much harder than I did. because there wasn't social media. Like I still compared myself to other people, but it wasn't the same way that you guys experience it with social media. And of course, people are posting their good moments. They're not posting when it's chaos and, you know, they're losing their mind and the house is a wreck. So it's like we get this skewed image of what's happening maybe in other people's families that is it's a reflection of a moment in time, but it's not the whole picture. But yes, we do a lot of comparison, and it's a setup. It's a setup to feel bad, because usually then we feel somehow that we're not good enough or we're not doing it good enough. And it's really hard. And I think we live just in a culture that does that, even outside of mothering. But I think mothering in particular, we do it because most of us, mothering is really important to us, and we want to do it really well, and we want to do, you know, right by our children. So we put a lot of expectation on ourselves. And the problem is that the expectation is up here and nobody could actually meet it. It's like, if we actually had a realistic expectation here, most of you'd be like, I'm doing pretty good. Like, I'm pretty good here. But because the expectation's here, it's like, I'm failing. And it's like, no, you're not. It's just that you got the bar at the wrong spot. It needs to be down here. And so that's where I try to help women look at what's more realistic. And this is a little strategy. I use it with so many of my clients, but particularly with the moms. It's like, if this wasn't you, if this was your best friend and she was having this experience, would you think she was a failure?
That's good.
No. So, when you're struggling with something and it's just like feeling like I'm a crappy mom, and, you know, my friend wouldn't do that, or Jen wouldn't do that with her child. It's like, take a step back and it's like, okay, if the roles were reversed and my friend came to me and said this was just her experience, would you think she was a bad mom? And most times it'd be like, no. You'd be just like, you haven't slept in 3 days, your kid had a fever, of course you're going to not be your best. Like, we can look at it in context with someone who's not us, but with us, we put on this very judgmental lens and look at ourselves as not good enough, which just isn't fair. So really, a lot of the problem is the expectation, and we would never hold that expectation for anybody else, which is good, because it's not appropriate. It's not fair, but we don't even think twice about doing it to ourselves. So the moral of the story is that we're all doing the best we can. This is a really hard job, and there's no job harder. Like, I've done lots of big jobs and important jobs, but there's been no harder job than being a mom. And I've made lots of mistakes along the way. I've, had terrible mothering moments. But overall, I've raised two, great young adult people. So I feel like I must have done something okay enough, because I've got these two good humans who are functioning in the world pretty well. But it's nobody's going to do this perfectly. We're all going to have bad moments, and we need to be able to be together and be open and honest about what the journey is and what the struggle is, so that we're not in it alone. Because, in those early years for me, like, I wanted everybody to think I had my shit together and I had it all together. But behind closed doors, I didn't. But I didn't want anybody to see that. And it would have been much better for me to be able to, like, let a few trusted people say, yeah, I'm having a hard time, and there are days that I'm not really having a lot of fun here. I needed that sense of community and support, but I deprived myself of it because I felt like I had to kind of be this mom. Like, I had this image in my mind, and it just didn't help me. So I really want to help women have a different experience to reduce some of that sort of suffering that we kind of put on ourselves.
When I feel that way, I have this constant fear that I'm psychologically damaging my children.
Yes.
I when I lose my cool, or
Yeah.
I've maybe been like unreasonable,
Yeah.
or like I'm a mom of two, and I felt like the first time I could really dedicate my time to my child, where
Yeah.
this time I don't feel like I got a good groove of finding balance between the two. So then I feel like I'm neglecting one, and now
Yeah.
he's going to be scarred for life. And then
Yes.
like I find that I'm setting my children up for failure.
Right.
Not even so much judging myself. Like, I know
Right.
that it's a struggle. My
Right.
friends are moms, and I've been a mom for a few years now, and I feel like I get that, but I feel like I'm setting my children up to be terrible people.
Well, Kimberly, what I want to tell you is the fact that you're having this conversation and you're thinking about this is very protective. So the chances are likely they're going to be just fine. But it's because we love them so much and we care so much that then we start thinking, oh, they're going to be on some therapist couch one day talking about me and all the crap I did to them.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a funny story. Like I lost my cool with my kids, you know, like everybody else does. But like what I would define as one of my worst parenting moments with my son, like I was just, if anybody had seen me, I would have been so embarrassed. And I was like, sure, he was scarred for life. He was, I don't know how old he was, maybe like 8, 9, but old enough to remember. And I've asked him about this recently. He has no memory of it. He has no memory of the event. It was, and I just like slammed my hands on the counter and kind of yelled at him. So it wasn't anything horrible, but it was just like, I was just like, thought like I'd scarred him for life and he didn't even remember. So what I think is really important with our kids is that we're going to blow it with them. We're going to lose our cool. We're going to have a moment where we wish we had have done something different. But like any relationship, we can repair. And that's the key. So just like in your intimate relationship with a partner, if you have a fight or you do something or you're insensitive or whatever, you repair afterwards. We do the exact same thing with our kids. So if you have a moment when you're not sort of your best version of yourself and you're like, oh crap, that was awful, and they're going to be on some therapist couch one day, you can then have a little conversation with them at whatever their level is to repair that. And so, and I think with a secure attachment with your children, they can tolerate our imperfection, and especially if we're doing that repair piece. Does that make sense, Kimberly?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. I think your kids are probably going to be fine. but I want to say this too. My daughter, who's 22, she is seeing a therapist, and I'm sure, and she saw a therapist in high school. And you can imagine, as a therapist mom, I'm like, oh shit, she's talking about me. And I'm sure in her high school days she was, because I was driving her crazy and she was driving me crazy. But I just had to get okay with, at least she was getting help. At least she was talking to somebody. She couldn't talk to me at that time. The two of us were not in a good place. And now we're in a much better place and she's seeing a therapist for something else. But it's like, I just had to get okay with, it's all right. As long as she's got somewhere and she's getting the help she needs, it's all good. Yeah.
Do you have any, I know we're probably running out of time, but do you have any quick tips on how to, I know you talked about briefly about the pandemic.
Yeah.
But if the rumors are true and we're going into this big major lockdown, how to deal with that, especially over holidays where kids are not in school.
Yes.
And you might not have the family and that we maybe have been looking forward to getting together, even with a micro bubble.
Yes.
Like how to deal with that isolation that might be feeling. And Christmas can be a really hard time.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it really is a tough time. And I think it's kind of recognizing you're going to do the best you can. And it might be sort of like relaxing some of the expectations you have. And I'm not suggesting you put your kid in front of a screen for 8 hours straight, but not to beat yourself up if there's a little bit more screen time, just as a survival strategy. On the days when the weather cooperates, getting outside, I think is really important. I can remember just feeling, especially when I had my second, it was just like being in the house. It was like, I'm going to go crazy. But if we just got outside, it just kind of recalibrated us somehow. So I think that getting that fresh air and for kids to burn off, if they're a little bit older, being able to burn off some steam is helpful. And even for us as well, just to get out and get that fresh air. But I think it's having to recognize we're going to do the best we can, but it's going to probably look a little bit different, and to give ourselves the grace that it's okay that it looks different. If we just have to be a little more lax around meals because we just don't have the energy to do it the way we normally would, to be okay with that.
What's your problem?
And as I said before, with the, like, if you have anyone that you feel is sort of lower on the risk, that if you need that support person or you need that break person to look at, is there somebody who is a low enough risk that it makes sense to let them into the bubble to be able to give that reprieve? Hard time though, especially if there's expectations to work from home with children at home. It's like, I don't know how people do that.
Screen time.
It's insanity. It's just insanity. Oh,
So how do we get set up? You said to do these 20-minute, a little 20-minute.
yeah. So over in the chat, Melinda, there's a link, a Calendly link. So you click on that. It'll take you to my a calendar where you can see what my availability is, and then you can just book a little session. Do you see it?
Where it says chat?
In the chat.
In the chat.
In the Zoom chat?
Yeah.
It says to
Yeah, like I've got my chat open and I can see it there.
I don't see anything in the Zoom chat, like the actual active Zoom chat right now.
Okay, oh, there's Melinda. She just popped in. Mine's above Melinda. Let me put it in again and just see if there was, oh, let me see. You cannot minify your Zoom when you're recording. Okay, it's not going to let me. Okay, so are you guys okay? I want to put it in again. Well, let me see if it'll just let me copy and paste it because I had it. Let me see. I know enough technology just to be dangerous, ladies. So just so that you know that. There we go. Let me see. Let me see if I can put it in. Oh, there. Okay, I just put it in. Oh, it looks like it just went to Melinda privately.
See, I think you click everyone.
And I thought I did. Let me try it again. Everyone in meeting. Okay, let's try this again. Operator error. There we go.
Ah, there you go. I see it.
Thank you for telling me it wasn't there. I know my clinical stuff. I just don't know my technology stuff as well.
When, whoops, lost you. There it is. When would you like us to book?
You can book whenever works for you. So there should be some availability, like throughout, like now and throughout the holidays. I think there's still availability. So yeah, you can just book whenever works for you.
And to clarify, this will probably be via like.
Yeah, it'll be via Zoom.
Phone or Zoom. Okay.
Zoom. Yeah, yeah. I'll do a Zoom.
Yeah, because I don't know if you're doing in person, right?
I'm not personally. Therapists at my office are doing in person, but I'm still just exclusively phone or video. Yeah. Well, I hope this was helpful today, ladies. It was really nice to get to see you guys and to connect with Jen. Jen and I had a great conversation on the phone a couple of weeks ago, and it was just great to hear that you guys you've pivoted, you're still going. It just looks a little different.
Yep, and we're still going.
Yes. All right. Well, thanks so much for making time to be here this morning. And thank you, Jen, for inviting me in to be able to meet with the group. I will, I'll post the link for the recording for anybody else who would like to have a listen. And if anybody wants to connect with one of the private 20-minute appointments, just click in and I'd be happy to connect with you further.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.